Welcome to Unraveling the Brain. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Madsen. Today I got a super exciting interview. This is actually one of my best friends, my mentor, the person who actually got me involved with functional neurology, functional medicine. He's been a huge guiding light for me, Dr. Trevor Eason. He's down in Cookeville, Tennessee. He's a nurse practitioner now. He does a lot of functional medicine, just a huge wealth of knowledge in every aspect, from functional medicine, neuro rehab, physical medicine, conventional medicine, and we're going to just talk about a whole bunch of stuff related to kids, to adults, to just health in general. So this is going to be an awesome conversation for you guys to listen to and just learn how to be healthier just in general. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming, man.
I know, it has been. You know, he's here visiting for the long weekend here, and a good opportunity to get a podcast
well, hopefully we
in
can get
chat.
like more of these things going, because I'm really excited about it. But yeah, man, everything is good. I mean, like down in Tennessee, I treat like so many different types of patients, and I would say like it is kind of more of an integrative practice where we focus a lot on like the functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, phys med, and so on, like you were saying. But like, I'll tell you what, like one of the most interesting things, specifically, well, when I was working in Chicago, it was like that too. But like one of the most interesting things that I see is like gut health. I mean, gut health is like so paramount. And I think like the American food industry has really like distorted us. I learned a statistic the other day. I was talking about like how like, you know, tobacco company and everything else was going through and saying like, more people were talking about how the tobacco company got rated and everybody else was like, oh, tobacco is bad for you, right? So they're like, how do we make more money, right? So they start buying out the food industry and start like capitalizing on all these different things and trying to figure out ways to make food more addictive and make more like just way more unhealthy, right? 100%. And you know what you're finding in all of the patients that I'm seeing is like their guts are destroyed. And it's not so much just about like processed foods and sugars and this, like the food has dramatically changed, even
from when we were kids, like it wasn't even that long ago.
I know. It's just, it's insane. And like we run a specific array of GI tests, and I can tell you like 95% of the time somebody has like some terrible, like this stuff going on. It's bad. Like, it's not good.
And you know, and for a lot of people that don't know this, so you had taught, I went to chiropractic school with you.
Yeah.
Then you taught, after that, you did functional neurology there. Then you taught for CARIC, which is like the leader in chiropractic neurology, or one of the biggest organizations there. You taught for them. So like you have this massive neuro background, and which now helps you a lot with obviously like looking at the gut and how that affects the brain and all those types of things. But I think this is going to be really interesting conversation, because it goes back to, you know, a lot of kids that have developmental issues, they have gut issues. A lot of people that have thyroid issues have gut
100%.
issues, like, you know, like all of those types of things and how that affects the brain. I think that'd be a really fun topic to talk about, of like how, you know, a gut infection can dysregulate the gut and then therefore dysregulate the brain.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you see it day in and day out. I mean, I know you have all your kids on like protocols specifically for nutritional supplementation and stuff like that, because if you don't feed the gut, you're never going to feed the brain. Right. Like you
That's
can
how
do
all your nutrients.
Yeah, exactly. You can do all the stimulation you want, but if you don't take away that inflammatory protagonist, like you're never going to really get them better. And I learned this a lot. I mean, like I have an innumerable amount of degrees. And the reason why I did is because I never want to stop learning. I got on this path and I was just like, this isn't enough. Like there's more to it. And every time I went back to school to study more, I just found more and more and more. And like even with the neuro-based stuff, like the reason I went back to school to get like my medical license was there are certain instances, and a lot of people have like a bad notion about like medicine, right? So you can't do pharmaceutical because it's done poorly on a lot of the
definitely
standards.
Time and a place in so many instances.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, like learning more, not only about the pharmaceutical industry, but just pharmacology and everything else, like it really opened up my mind to like just the pathophysiology and everything else that goes into like helping people. But like with my neuro background, like I loved what I did, but there was just something missing.
Yeah, there's a piece missing.
Yeah, and then when I went back to school, I learned way more about labs, learned way more about all this stuff, and then we started dabbling into functional medicine, and I just realized how closely correlated the gut-brain-gut connection was, how the microbiome plays into everything we do, how 60 to 70% of our immune system is found in our gut. Yeah. Like, how are we going to get kids better?
Like 80% of our neurotransmitters or 100%. Something along that.
Yeah,
gut,
exactly.
Produced in our gut.
And it just goes down to, like, it's not... I got a lot of friends that are either psychiatric nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, and their whole goal is to get people to feel better, but they have one tool, and that's medicine. And it's not just more medicine, more neurotransmitters, more like there are so many different ways to stimulate the brain, so many ways to invigorate somebody's whole sense of being with what they do in their life, what they eat, what they do. And, I see it every day. I mean, like when it comes to people's gut is by far the most beneficial thing. Like, what are you seeing? Like, what are you seeing within the kids you treat?
Oh man, I mean, chronic yeast overgrowths, chronic bacterial infections, obviously very poor leaky gut.
Yep.
Hyperpermeable guts. And when you run these tests, like these different labs, these different functional tests, different stool samples, I mean, you see this over and over and over again. And then, on top of that, you just got to think of like, well, if they have a chronic yeast infection, like they have no absorption. So they have super low protein levels. They have, which is the building blocks for their brain. Like, they don't have that. They don't have mitochondrial function or energy production because they don't have enough nutrients to even get to that point. They've decrease in B vitamin, levels. They have vitamin D deficiencies, and again, all that has to come through our gut. So
absolutely, and like I'll tell you, you hit on some perfect points. Like I'll tell you, like a lot of people when I go, like we run this big panel of like GI stuff, and then I interpret it through the wazoo. And what we find a lot is like people's protein statuses though. Like people don't realize that they're not eating enough protein. They don't realize that their gut doesn't have enough hydrochloric acid to actually break that protein down. And then there's usually there's some type of dysbiosis or SIBO or something like that, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, that doesn't allow them to absorb that nutrient in small intestine and then distribute it throughout their body. And to be honest with you, like we have health coaches and functional nutritionists, and without them, I'd be nothing. Like they go through and make sure that people are getting their nutrient status while I do the medical side of things.
Yeah, like they're following a regimen to actually get to the point where their gut's healthy enough to actually absorb it.
Exactly. And we were just talking about a patient this weekend, like how like literally, I don't think people realize like the propensity of infection that can, not just like dysbiosis, right? Too much bad bacteria in comparison to good. That happens all the time. But people have a lot of GI infections that they don't think about. H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori is one of the most prominent. And I got to be honest, I would say easily probably 50% of the GI tests that I do, they have it, right? And I just don't treat that patient. I have to treat their spouse. I have to treat potentially their kids because it is transmissible through oral and contact. Like if you're sipping on your kid's drink and you have H. pylori now, and they may have it. Or if you're, kissing your husband or kissing your wife or something, they may have it and now you transmit it to them. Or maybe they gave it to you. Yeah. And now you're just going back and forth. So it's
treat it in them and then they get it right back.
Exactly, right? So you just can't miss these things where like you have to go beyond the person that's sitting in front of you and think like, who do they interact with? What are they doing? And if you don't treat those things, then maybe you help that patient.
Yeah.
But they're going to be
in their environment to go off of that too, of like the, what's surrounding them in their environment when you run total toxic burdens and mycotoxins and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like in and of itself, like we run a total tox burden. I know you run a total tox burden. That tells us about like mycotoxins, environmental toxins, and heavy metals. And if they come in, like typically, I typically try to save people money, right? Because like specialty tests can be expensive. And if I run like a specific GI test and I see they have candida, I immediately go into like, or yeast in their gut, I immediately go into like, what's your house look like? Is your house older than 15 years? Is there any potential for water damage, mold, or anything like that? And then we go along that rabbit trail. It's just like, okay, we potentially need to do this mycotoxin test. And lo and behold, that's the reason why they have candida in their gut, because the mycotoxins have spurred this on and now they're having all these things. And candida loves sugar.
Yeah.
And the American society, American population, like major consumption of sugar.
Oh yeah, sugar's added to everything.
Yeah, and you're just feeding
everything.
It, right? So like our environment's so big, and like to go back to the heavy metals, like first thing I do is look in people's mouth. I mean, like cavities, metals, stuff like that.
Send them to a biological dentist to get it removed. So not just
exactly right. So like
metals all the time.
And we have people that we really good friends of ours that like, in two places in Nashville that we send them to, and they're fantastic, right? It doesn't like people are like, oh, I don't have thousands of dollars to have this metal yanked out of my mouth. It's just like, what do you do every single day? You eat and you swallow. How many times a day? You're swallowing heavy metal. So like, even if I treat you and I treat these metals and I do all this stuff, it's going to come back. Yeah. And it's just like, I can chelate. I can put you on IV chelation. I can give you oral chelation. I can help your liver detox. I can help you do those things. But if we don't yank out the source,
if you don't address the underlying cause,
you're not going to get anywhere. And like, we are so big on root cause. And there's a lot of people out there that say like root cause isn't a thing. It's just one catalyst. It's just like, there is no single source. And like, to be honest, like I would say that's partially true, but it's not, right? Like you can get somebody 80 to 90% better and completely revolutionize their life by fixing one thing. Like for thyroid. I mean, I don't know how many people come into my office. I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. And like I've been in remission for a while because I took control of my life. I had to do an array of things that were very uncomfortable to me. I failed many times with myself. I did terrible things to my body, just figuring out what would be a solution for figuring that out. And I can tell you by far, the common three are adrenals, gut, and liver. And the last substitutionary one is going to be like mycotoxins, tox burden.
Yeah.
And if you don't address those things, your thyroid is a protagonist of like what happens to it. Yeah. If there's heavy amounts of inflammation or something like that in your body, you can do whatever you want. You can give yourself thyroid supplement. You can give yourself medication. You can do laser on your thyroid. You can do methylene blue with red light and help that kind of push into the mitochondria. You can do whatever. But if you don't address that underlying cause, fixing the gut, fixing the adrenals, getting rid of that inflammation, your thyroid is just working harder because it has to deal with that on a regular basis. And it's just, it's insane. So you have to address all those things. It's not just as easy as, there's probably plenty of people that may be watching like I got thyroid issues. Like my doctor just tests my TSH. If I'm lucky, they might do my free T4. And they're like, here's your Synthroid. See you later. You're like, you're going to be fine. Synthroid, levothyroxine, it's just the storage form of thyroid hormone. That's it.
If you never test TPO, it's crazy.
Never. And like, I'll tell you, after COVID, it's one of the most prolific things that I've seen in my practice. Autoimmunity by and large has increased easily 65 to 70% in my practice alone after COVID. Why? Because them spike proteins sit in your body and they're in your body for at least 8 months after. It doesn't matter if you're whatever. That causes a massive immunomodulatory effect where your immune system's like, I'm chronically under stress because I can't figure out what the heck this thing is in my body and I have to figure it out. So now it's stressed and now you just develop all these immune related things. And I'm going to confuse some people in your audience, but you have a Th1 and a Th2 system in your immune system. Th1 is like your system's like, you look funny, I'm going to kill you because you're not going to attack me. Th2 is the people that have been sicker for a longer period of time. And that Th2 response is like, I need to figure this out. Have I seen you before, the virus or whatever it may be? Have I seen this before? What do I need to do? I mean, that time you've already developed 4 or 5 days worth of symptoms. You feel terrible. And then you kill it off. This is how people develop immune regulated issues, is because they don't try to combat that and try to get back to that Th1 strain where like something looks funny, I'm going to kill it. So now I don't get sick. Yep. Right. But you have to do all the lifestyle factors, like what you teach and do with all your patients.
It's
like,
never just one thing. It's
never.
It's always so many things that play into that. And like I tell parents that all the time, it's like, they come in like, oh, my kid has we had a mold toxicity and that created this whole thing. Well, I'm sure that's 100% playing into it, but it's probably not just that. Like there's probably all these other aspects and especially like diet related stuff. And because especially with a lot of these kids, they're on really poor diets. They don't have any nutrients in them. They're super high carbohydrates and they have all these fungal issues. They're just feeding constantly. And
absolutely. And
if you don't address it, just like you said, you can do all the rehab in the world and you're probably going to make some symptomatic improvements temporarily, but long term,
100%.
The kid's going to struggle or the person's going to struggle.
Absolutely. So like, what do you think is obviously most of the kids that you see, most of the kids that I see, like they are stuck on that standard American diet, like rich in sugars, rich in processed foods, rich in, inflammatory byproducts. Like, what are you finding that's like the most difficult to help the parents like curb that big change, that big dietary change?
It's starting simple and building. Like, I think that's the most important thing is like, hey, let's remove processed foods or let's remove gluten, dairy. Like, let's remove those inflammatory foods. Let's, let's get them to you go to a store and you go, okay, that looks like real food. It doesn't come in a box. It doesn't come in plastic. It doesn't come in XYZ. It's like a true food, like a paleo type of diet where it's meat is meat. Like it's an animal that grew on this planet, as long as it's, obviously a organic scenario there, and vegetables and fruit and that type of stuff, obviously staying away from super high sugar stuff. But that's the first place to start. Like, it's like, hey, let's just get let's get them real food. So they have actual building blocks.
And like the biggest thing is like, we have kids.
Yeah.
And our kids are growing, trying to figure out this world, trying to get away from some of the processed things. And like, we don't always make the right choice. And I want, like, parents should know, like, you're never going to make the right choice all of the time. And you shouldn't have that amount of stress on your plate to always feel like, oh my gosh, I gave my kid like.
Dude, my kid had pancakes and syrup this weekend. Like, you know what I mean?
It's really like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, but what happens is when it turns into that boulder effect, when we get too
every
busy.
Day.
And like, it's just like, oh no, like, I'm busy right now finishing up some work, go get some snacks. And those snacks are just like processed boxed foods. And it's just like, you don't think about it. Nobody thinks about it. And like, I'll tell my story just recently. Like, I realized like I wasn't taking care of myself because we've been so busy in practice. And like my gut was ravaged. I ran one of the tests I run in my office and I realized I had this. And it was the first 2 weeks of like going through my own protocol was like massive withdrawal, not detox, withdrawal from sugar and caffeine.
Yeah.
Things that were sustaining me in my 10, 11 hour days that I thought that I needed to function, and I did. But like just that withdrawal effect, that and we have to really like, for us as doctors, providers, to like really put ourselves and like know what's good for our patients, you really have to experience it for yourself. Because then you can modify and say like, okay, I know what you're feeling. You need to have like buffered vitamin C, and you need to have a few other things to help you with the caffeine withdrawal or other things like that. I remember the first time I did that whole protocol and like I just died. Like I completely died. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't take electrolytes. I didn't take buffered C. I didn't take like some type of binder like charcoal or something like that to help me with the die-off effect, and literally felt like I had like, cancer. And I'm like dying on my deathbed. Like it was bad. But like we start to build these things, and then we can extend those, pieces of, knowledge to our patients and their parents and stuff like that. That just helps them like go through it. But in and of itself, I feel like I am very grateful for my health coaches and my nutritionists. And like another thing with kids, like I always get very concerned when I have to put like kids on some form of restrictive diet because they're growing.
Yeah.
Right. They're growing. 100%. And like even if I have them on a restrictive diet for like, let's just say a month or two, that can massively impede their growth.
100%.
But this is why like it's very important to have professionals intervening and saying like, listen, you need to do this. Like if your kid's having these symptoms, you need to introduce even if it's outside of the diet, they still need that for their growth and development, because they are young and they are growing, and their body it's not like us where we're already big, like we don't need it. But for them, it's so imperative for their maturation, not only for their physical body, but for their organ systems, their brain and everything else.
And going off of that, like, sometimes you see it, because like, I don't want people to misconstrue this as like, let's say you say, hey, your kid has a gluten or dairy sensitivity or XYZ, or their gut's dysregulated. A lot of times taking those foods out, they'll grow tremendously because now their gut can absorb nutrients. So like there is those aspects too of like, because sometimes we have parents that go, oh, well, if, I'm not feeding them this or that, and, like, are they going to lose weight? And like, and that's the first thing, like, we don't want them to ever lose weight. We want them to continue to gain weight. Correct. But usually what you'll see is when you start taking those out, their gut gets healthier. They start absorbing nutrients at a much higher rate, and they actually gain a lot of weight. They grow a lot.
Exactly.
And in conjunction with stimulating their brain at the same time, it's, I don't remember what I was listening to a long time ago, but it's like, your brain grows at the same rate as your body. And like as you start stimulating their brain,
if not more,
they start growing like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which is wild.
Absolutely. And like, I'll tell you one of the biggest things. I'll tell you a story about like a family member of mine. It's my niece, and she had been going through just an array, like from the day she was born. She just had stuff, behavioral issues, like. She would require like 11 hours of sleep. If she didn't get 11 hours of sleep, she would just be a train wreck. I mean, like emotional outbursts, all this stuff, had migraine headaches, had severe bags under her eyes, looked like she had all these different things going on. And her family, like my family took her to the doctor. It's like, oh yeah, parents are just, skinnier people, ganglier people, blah, blah, blah. That's why she's literally malnourished and looks malnourished and all this other stuff, and like just super skinny, and like she just doesn't feel good. It's just her. And I'm like, no, that's not it at all. How it goes. I run this GI test on her, and to this day, by far, worst test I've ever seen. Worst test. She had C. diff which is Clostridium difficile.
Yeah.
Don't know how she got that. Could have been because she took a heck of amount of antibiotics when she was a baby. Could have just seen it for whatever.
Yep.
She had Candida. She had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like you don't absorb nutrients well. So your gut breaks this down. You have enzymes from your pancreas and your gallbladder, and then you have the acid from your gut, and it's kind of breaking down these byproducts in our food, and then eventually like it goes down and sits in our small intestine. It's just like those little gold nuggets of nutrients that can be distributed. But then when you get like translocation of bacteria from your gut or translocation of bacteria from your large intestine coming up where it's not supposed to be, just nubbing on all this gold. What happens?
Eating it all.
Yeah, you just get all this fermentation and bloating, and you don't absorb any nutrients. And then you have all these issues. But, you know, for her, like, we're doing a video on her right now, and like it is literally insane. The physical, emotional, psychological transformation that has happened with this child. Like, I kid you not, like when you we're going to show pictures, and you can check out our stuff if you want to, but I mean, like, tired, bagged, fatigued. She's smiling, but she looks sick.
Yeah.
And like now I literally saw a picture and I was like, oh my gosh. Like she literally
healthy,
looked
vibrant.
Well,
child.
like vibrant and like angelic. Like she like had color in her face.
Yeah.
And she had like, it's amazing that, and I feel, and I know you feel the exact same way, that we have these tools at our disposal and we can extend them to people in the community. We can extend them to our patients.
Yep.
And like, I think a lot of people are really, and you and I are both that way. Like people don't know that this stuff's available, and we're trying to reach the masses for it. And that really is the goal. Like there are alternatives just than just going to the family doctor, say, oh, she's just tall and gangly because mom are tall and gangly, and this is just part of her growth and blah, blah.
That's just her.
It's like no.
That's
like,
not just her. Yeah.
No. So it's crazy. I'm sure you see that.
Well,
like,
and
all
you
the
think
time.
of like when you go back to the behavioral issues or the attentional issues or XYZ, it's like your brain needs basic nutrients to even just develop and grow. And I mean, you have to have those things and that's what we find. Most of these kids, they don't even have basic nutrients, basic building blocks, basic mitochondrial function to even produce enough energy to activate their brain. And they're not getting enough oxygen because they're not moving because they feel awful.
No. And you know this too. And like, we see this all the time. And like one of the things we did this weekend was what we do. Like we literally turned off the Wi-Fi in your lake house, and we turned off like all of our devices. It's the first weekend in probably years where like I didn't even touch my phone.
Yeah.
No screen time, no TV, nothing. Just being on the lake, enjoying the sun, playing, enjoying each other. And like, I know my kids thrived. I know that I thrived.
Yeah,
like,
me too, for
and
sure.
like, I think the realm of like, and you probably can attest to this, like how important is it to just detach from electronics?
Be present. Just be present.
Just be present. Like, and that's the relational, emotional side of things. But like kids' brains, like they're sponges. And if they're satiating that sponge with digital content, iPad time, phone time, just to keep them quiet, just gets so easy. I mean, like when I'm on the phone or a flight or in the car ride or something like that, it's easy to be like, here's the iPad, here's whatever. We just bought, and this is no plug for a Yoda player, but we bought a Yoda player, and it's literally like no screen. It's got these basically credit cards that you stick in the top of the machine. You can turn it. It's got like a little digital, I don't know, it looks like it's out of the 80s, digitized little pictures of like a pizza or whatever. And it sings them songs, tells them stories. They can plug in, they can listen to it. And then they have to use their brain to imagine. Mm-hmm. They have to have that creativity to see like, what is the story telling me? Like having that imagination, that creation is a lost art in kids. And that is uber depressing.
100%.
Uber depressing. I remember going outside as a kid and just like
bike for 5 hours.
Yeah, you know, crashing, breaking my face and everything else. And like literally, like that were the best days. And now, like every kid that comes into my office, like, what do you do for fun? Video games.
Play video games.
Watch TV. You watch YouTube. Like all this stuff. And like that really is where the world is unfortunately going. But it doesn't mean that's where you have to go. Like there's always those safe moments where you can be like, listen. You can watch this for this amount of time, but you also have to do this too.
Yeah.
And if there ever becomes that unhealthy relationship of like, oh gosh, like it's a chore to go outside. It's a chore to do the things that allow that development and maturation of neuromotor, neurosensory, all these things to like falter, and like, then I can do my digital, then I can play my video, and that's where parents are getting stuck. is like they're using it as a reward, but that reward is still inhibiting. Like they're not in, like you, like let's just say you go to a course to learn more to help your patients, right? But you're really not into it. You're just doing it because you have to. Did you learn anything?
No.
Not even close. If you go to a seminar and you love it and you're like, this is the best thing ever, did you learn something?
You learn so much.
Absolutely.
And you apply it.
Absolutely, right? So if you extend that same principle to your kids and you tell them like, if you go outside and play and you go do this and they're like, I don't want to do this, and all they're thinking about is the digital time they're going to get, you could might as well just say stay inside and do that, because they didn't captivate that moment. They didn't experience anything, and all their mind was like rotating to think about was like, the goal is this. Yeah. The goal is the digital time.
And I even realized, like, even with our own son, is we went on a trip to Colorado, and the first couple of days, like I got sick, and so like we let him watch a movie at night because I was just like, just trash, right? And then, but every single night he watched a movie, the next morning it was like waking up and he was just super dysregulated, super hard. Like he's normally super happy, super like just really fun. Yeah. And those mornings were really hard and really stressful. And then we were just like, nope, no more. We're done.
Absolutely.
And every morning wakes up super, happy, excited, wants to go outside and play, wanted to go out and hike, wanted to go fishing, wanted to go like do all those things, right? Versus if he watches the movie at night, it's like, ooh, which he likes to watch, what's it called? Chasing Monsters with Cyril, which is a fishing show, which is great. He loves it. But he'd wake up, can I watch Cyril? Can I watch Cyril? Can I watch Cyril? Versus now, he wakes up and he's like,
let's go fishing.
Can I go fishing? Can I go do this or that?
Right. And it's like, it's just crazy too. Like my son literally, like, he gets these, and we've noticed it more probably within the last 3 weeks of like, he'll like, because we're in the office a lot, and like he'll just run, and like there's iPad, there's equipment, there's everything everywhere, and like all of a sudden, like, where's Brooks? And he's like, he finds an iPad and he's like trying to do stuff. Everything's locked, but like if there's ever times where he's like watching YouTube, like immediately you're like, okay, Brooks, we're all done. We're like done doing this. He loses it. Yeah. Right. And like the stuff on YouTube, like that he wants to watch is so dumb. like it's literally like content that like literally has nothing to do with maturation and development, everything to do with dopamine hits. Yeah. For kids.
I think of like that of if they're getting so much dopamine from a screen, now the rest of the world is just boring and dull and nothing, And the same thing with like if they're eating a bunch of processed food and getting all that sugar, and then you go and give them like a water, it's like, well, now there's no dopamine associated with it. There's no like reward 100%. For their brain and body, and like, well, I don't want that at all. I'm just going to stay addicted to these things.
Absolutely.
But then they can't function in everyday life. You got so much dopamine all the time from that. Like try going to school, there's no dopamine. You're like, well, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want to do this at all.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to freak out until I get my iPad again.
Yeah, I remember specifically when I was a kid, there was one time it was literally a rainy day. I remember my room was a wreck because I couldn't even see the floor. And like, do you remember like Nickelodeon? Like they had like, I can't remember. It was like Nickelodeon, but it was like the Kids' Choice Award or something. Like I'm like freaking 10 years old or something like that. And like, this sucks. Like this is boring. I don't want to do anything like that. And I remember thinking like, I might actually die with the amount of boredom that I have right now. Yeah. But then like, I literally remember like just sitting down, and this is like a plug for VTech, but like, it was the first time that I actually got on like this computer type of thing that had like these flashcards and all this other stuff. And literally, I think I'm smarter in math because of that stupid computer game as a kid. Like I literally had to figure it out. I had to figure out how to be excited and creative, and I had to figure out the problem. I had to figure out how can I make myself happy with what I have at my disposal. Not like what can happen to me to change my neurochemistry. Yeah, exactly, right? So like, I think now, even adults, like what do women do when they wake up in the middle of the night, or even guys, if they're on Amazon, right? They're on social media. Yeah. They're doing something to stimulate. Yeah, like they're just the same thing. It's like in originally it started as emails or pagers or stuff like that. It was just like, oh, I'm important, this is good. Like there's what's in my little treasure box now.
What's on my comments?
Yeah, no, now I think like now, like this is terrible. If you're my patient, I'm sorry, but I think I have like 100,000 emails that are unanswered like on my phone because it's just like overwhelming. And I'm like, I don't care to see this anymore. Like I'm just like done with it. But it's just one of those things where like the world is heavily saturated with all these things that are really distorting our brains. And now you have things like AI that are coming in and making life so much easier to depend on things. Like you don't think anymore. You don't even have to search.
Dementia. You're just I mean, digital dementia. I used to know my best friend's phone number from when I was 6. Like,
Yep.
I mean, I know my wife's. I don't know anyone. I don't even remember my parents' phone number because I have a cell phone to do it.
No, I mean, I can't remember my name sometimes. So like, like in and of itself, like it's a real problem. Like there is literally nothing you can't do or ask the internet now or ask AI or anything like that won't just do it. I mean, like you can literally ask ChatGPT to write you a dissertation and it'll write you a PhD level dissertation that will get flagged from your school or whatever. But like it's incredible the power of these things. And like everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Why do I need to think? I'm just going to go and party and have fun. We are becoming dumber and dumber as a society.
This video is sponsored by Unraveling the Brain, which is actually my course to train doctors to help these kids in the way that we do. So if you guys know anyone and know any doctors that are in your area that are maybe interested in working with kids, go ahead and send them a link to limitlessfoundation.co so that way I can help train them so you guys have a provider close to you guys. Let's jump to the show. And also, like, our rates of developmental issues are just astronomically skyrocketing. And, these things, in like these tools, they should be used, in my opinion, they should be used to give you more time to be outside. They should be used to give you more time to do things that, like, are actually important. Like, like the, and then it's a great tool. But in most cases, I feel like it's used as a tool to make more time to do other stuff that's really not good for you at all. Like to be on social media more, or to be like, I'm going to get through this so I can be on social media. I'm going to get through this so I can, be over here, right? Versus actually creating stuff that's important to help people. And then now I have an extra 2 hours. Like I love ChatGPT to find me research articles.
Yeah.
I need a research article for this. I can't find it anywhere else. Like, where can I find it? Give me the link to it. Boom. Now I just found it. I read a super good research
and then you
article.
can like look at the footnotes. You can look at all these different things, and you can see like what articles the author used to build this paper.
Yeah.
And then you can literally go down the rabbit trail.
Yeah.
But like ChatGPT in that instance makes things easier.
Right.
So it's not like ChatGPT is bad, but it's the intent behind it.
Yeah.
Right. Like
it would have taken me 6 hours to find those research articles. Now I found all of them in a matter of 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And I just saved myself 6 hours that I can go spend with my family.
Exactly.
Or I can go outdoors or whatever.
So I guess the principle and the thing we're trying to discuss here is like, if you're a parent or a young adult or something like that, like the choices you make and the intent behind those choices are really going to be what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. Like if your intent is just like, I want life to be easy and I want ChatGPT or whatever to be at my fingertips all the time and I don't have to do anything, you're missing the boat.
Right.
Like ChatGPT could be a wonderful tool. And it is used for a lot of things. I mean, businesses use it, like we use it and all this other stuff. But our intent behind it is different. Our intent is to help us solve a problem so we can spend more time building what we're trying to build for people.
Right.
To spend time like helping people, right? Not necessarily like write this whole thing so I can go party with my buddies or write this problem or fix this thing because like I just don't care enough about it and I want you to do it for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're basically a child that never grows up.
Yep.
Like you need that dependency of like somebody taking care of you. And I really think like that is, obviously a huge problem. So
100%. Kind of went down a rabbit hole there.
Yeah, we did. You obviously help an insurmountable amount of people, kids, and so on. Like, what are you most excited about for like this year? What are you most excited about when like the technology you use or the protocols you use? Like, how do you plan to like grow that?
Yeah. Yep. So I think I'm most, we started seeing, we see a lot of severe autistic kids, nonverbal autistic kids. And we've, especially since we started using different lasers, like violet lasers and different stuff like that, tremendous changes in regulation, tremendous changes in communication skills. Like that's really been awesome. Kids that have had, traumatic brain injuries and motor delays and genetic disorders, like we've been seeing really fantastic changes with these kids. And, they don't have really else that's getting those types of changes that you know, maybe there is different places that I don't know about, but like so it's been really fun to see that, number one, show that, number two. But now we're expanding into Denver area. We're expanding into Minneapolis. And each going to have a little bit different specialty too. But I'm excited to just spread the systems that we've created.
Absolutely.
You know, and I can't see patients really consistently anymore because I am working to help expand. But like, that's really my goal is if I'm sitting right in front of one patient, I can only see one patient.
Yeah.
If I build a system and build really great doctors and really great systems around those doctors, now we can see hundreds of kids at one time and really make a difference, because the rates of autism are skyrocketing. The rates of ADHD are skyrocketing. The rates of delays are skyrocketing. And when you look at the research, like the underlying, I'm not going to say causes because they're not causes, but underlying contributing factors are well known, and they're all environmental stuff.
Absolutely.
So being able to help educate parents into like, here's the underlying factors that we know from a research standpoint contribute to these things. We can make changes to those. Those are things that we can do to make a change for that child. And you know, maybe you take gluten out and that doesn't seem to make a huge effect, but then maybe we figure out that they had a mold issue, or maybe we figure out that they have environmental toxicities, and you figure out where those are coming from and you make that change. That changes everything for that child.
100%.
So those underlying mechanisms are known, and now there's starting to be labs, especially different functional labs and different.
They can extrapolate that data.
They can find that data and figure it out, and so now they have a real understanding of like, oh my gosh, my kid has all these things going on that we had no clue about, and the basic lab work would never find.
Never. And the thing that I always try to like explain to parents or patients or whatever, it all comes down to load, right?
Yeah.
Load.
Yep.
Right. Like, and it's just like, let's just use the instance, like you said, like maybe gluten doesn't help you or help your kiddo that much, but maybe you just didn't do it long enough.
Yeah.
Like maybe you just need to have that out of your diet for a longer period of time, because it doesn't matter. And like I tell patients all the time when it comes to gluten, not to go down this rabbit trail, but like maybe it's not gluten. Maybe it's glyphosate sprayed all over gluten.
100%.
Or maybe there's actual allergies, or maybe there's other things, or maybe you just have a heavy sensitivity because you have some GI infection in your gut that's causing your secretory IgA to be really, really high, and it's saying like, listen. And that's
your gut's already inflamed.
Yeah, your gut's already, yes. And like
mechanism.
I'll tell you what, I had a kid that literally he's a kid, but he's a kid to me, but he's like 20 years old, had his gallbladder removed, which is insane to me. His gallbladder function was like, I don't know, 18% or something like that when we did a HIDUS scan. And I said, like, you're probably gonna want to do this, but like he came from money, and his parents were like, oh, blah blah blah, we needed to get this out. And the other doctor was just like, listen, like if you get this out, it's gonna fix your problem. The kid's been suffering forever. What do you think he did? Got his gallbladder out, right? So then nothing helped. 6 months goes by. He calls me back and he's like, listen, I feel worse than ever. I can't keep anything down literally when I eat. Like it's just, coming out the other end as quick as possible. And I'm like, yeah, it's called dumping syndrome. Yeah. If you remove your gallbladder, you're not going to have any bile or chyme or stuff priced from your liver to push down and help you digest foods. And that wasn't the problem. So we ran this secondary GI on him because we ran a different test to begin with. And it showed that like he had heavy amounts of gluten sensitivity with heavy amounts of secretory IgA, which he has massive food sensitivity, but he had a huge gut infection. He had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and small intestinal fungal overgrowth, things that were just completely missed.
Yeah.
And when we started to treat it, he wanted me to test him for celiac. And I was like, you know what? Like, because during that time where the doc said you could have celiac, so maybe just cut it out of your diet. And he's tried it for a while, it didn't work. And then he cut it out forever. So he's like, yeah, I've been gluten-free or whatever. Now this guy is probably 6'2", 6'3", skinny as a rail, maybe 115, 20 pounds soaking wet, just real sick. And we start treating him, and like he's been cutting gluten out, but then I ran this test, and it's like his anti-gliadin antibodies were like super, super high. And I'm like, listen, you've been cutting gluten out heavily, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, your markers still look like you have celiac. So I ran a PCR DNA test for celiac, comes back negative. And the only reason why it was so high is because he had massive cross-contamination of foods, right? Not to mention some of the other dysbiosis. So we start treating those infections. He's got the cross-contamination issue. We fix everything up. He's better than ever.
Well, cross-contamination with?
Cross-contamination can come in the form of like corn chips or things that could have. So like a lot of food industries, and people don't think this is an issue, but it's 100% an issue. Like if I have a food industry and a company that's making specific byproducts of food, and they have wheat and gluten and all this, but then they don't clean the bowls out correctly, or they don't pay attention to their cycling and have good quality assurance stuff, then now maybe they have gluten from the last thing, and now they put the corn in there, and now they have this. Now we already know that, but
yeah.
But then you have things like glyphosate, right? Corn sprayed by glyphosate. Every crop you have is sprayed by glyphosate, but it still can cause that autoreactivity that may look like a gluten sensitivity and so on. So within that whole spectrum, once you, like my nutritionist, she used to be a culinary chef. She's like a super whiz, but she gives them this cross-contamination sheet that tells them, like, literally, these are the things you need to substitute. These are the things that have higher cross-contamination when it comes to, like, it looks like this.
Yep.
And then you need to cut those things out based on highest to lowest, and then whatever. So we did that. We treated the gut infection. He's doing better than ever. Another big thing for, like, thyroid, a lot of people don't realize, like, the 4 biggest things, like if you have Hashimoto's or if you have some other component of, like, thyroid disease that's caused by autoimmunity, the 4 you need to get out are, well, the 5 probably are gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, and all forms of, like, different types of processed grains and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like Dr. Karazian did that big study that showed all that cross reactivity. I still remember looking at that paper and reading that paper, but like it's well known, like that those things can cross react with your thyroid.
Well, yeah. And even when I was going through medical school, like what I would say is, like, one thing that I didn't realize when I was going through Karazian stuff was that, like, Hashimoto's isn't only caused by molecular mimicry, such as those things that I just said.
Yeah.
It can be caused by heavy amounts of viruses. It can be caused by just different environmental toxins, other factors and stuff like that. That doesn't have to be like, and when I say molecular mimicry, I mean, hey, the genetic structure of gluten looks heavily and closely related to the proteins in my thyroid and my cerebellum.
Yep.
So every time I eat gluten or any form of grain or something like that has gluten in it, not only am I having my immune system attack that gluten, but I'm having them attack my thyroid and I'm having them attack my cerebellum. So now I have hypothyroid and cerebellar ataxia, balance, coordination, vestibular issues, all stuff you deal with.
Getting anxious, getting motion sick,
anxiety, all these things. And it literally was, like, so eye-opening to me when I heard it. And this is, like, what, one of our very first podcasts. Like, well, not even that. It was a video that we did, like, what, like probably 8 or 9 years ago. We were just talking about this weekend and how I was talking about, I think it was about the cerebellum, how I was talking about, like, if your cerebellum's messed up, you're going to struggle with anxiety and you're going to struggle with, like, these balance and vestibular issues and things that just kick up your sympathetic nervous system. And that fight or flight just revving.
Yep. Which every kid with autism struggles with. 100%. Pretty much every kid with ADHD struggles with. Like, and also, like, it's just really interesting when you start looking at the research and how those, they're called Purkinje cells in your cerebellum, how dysregulated they get, but also how associated that is with different foods we're eating, different, environmental aspects there.
Well, 100%. And, like, I hate to say this, but you were right. But, like, like, I remember.
Say it again one more time.
You were totally wrong. I mean, you're right. You're right. So I remember, like, I was like, there's nothing wrong with gluten with me. Like, I don't react to gluten and all this other stuff. And I start feeling bad. And I like finally figure out, like, I run my antibodies for thyroid, and it's like, my TPO antibodies are like 400, and my thyroglobulin antibodies are like super high. Those are Hashimoto's antibodies for thyroid. And I start cutting out gluten, and I'm feeling like way better and all these different things. And I'm just like, I don't think people realize the power of knowledge when it comes to those things. And honestly, like, I mean, like, your body is a machine. And if you don't well oil that machine, if you don't take care, if you don't keep it pristine, if you don't do what you need to do, exercise, lifestyle, social, emotional, all these things in conjunction to what you put in and what your body interacts with on a regular basis on Earth, then you're not going to get the benefit. Like, you may not attest to this because you don't see that population of people, but I can tell you, like, a problem in the United States and really everywhere else is people care more about what they look like than how they feel. I mean, I live in a smaller town that's growing exponentially, and I'll tell you, like, more people, there's been more opening of, like, spas that do aesthetics. There's more things. I want to do weight loss. I want a quick pill. It's like, I don't want to do the hard work. I don't want to take care of my body. If it's not going to hurt me right now, I don't care.
Yeah.
And this is the principle of, like, paying attention to acute care medicine and chronic care.
Yeah.
What you do right now will most assuredly follow you in the next 40 years. Like, what you're doing right now, doesn't matter if you're 20, doesn't matter if you're 30, doesn't matter if you're 40, will affect you when you're 60, 70, 80. And this is where all chronic disease happens. And the principle, like coming from medicine and alternative and integrative, being in all of those educational platforms, I can tell you that it is probably one of the most prolific things that you can do to prevent have preventative medicine. I will tell you, like when I went through school, like we practice preventative medicine and we do screenings and we do this and we watch for we do labs and we do like mammograms and we do colorectal screens and we do all these different things. That's not preventative medicine. In the scheme of like the American Medical Association, what I learned, everything, it can be. But if we're talking about truly preventing chronic disease, it needs to follow the evidence, not the evidence that's supported by the food industry, not the evidence that's supported by big pharma, not the evidence. I will tell you, like my education in the medical side was completely fueled and sponsored by the pharmaceutical company. Yeah. Everything that I learned, all the screenings, everything was based on that. Yeah. Right. And if it doesn't follow those guidelines and if it doesn't do whatever, then you're not following evidence. But you
what
just
evidence?
Exactly. And like it just comes down to what evidence are you reading? What is being purported? You just said that you use ChatGPT and like you have other people on your staff that are just pulling in hundreds of thousands of papers that are purporting like if you do these things, these are the outcomes that you can expect. Yeah. Right? And in and of itself, like it literally, I don't understand how the American or like our healthcare system literally has to dictate like what is done on a regular basis to say these are preventative, these are the screens you need, and everything else is just either voodoo or whatever. Yeah. Like we thought smoking cigarettes were the jam. We thought that was going to make you have long years, right? Live a long time. And what happened? Cancer, carcinogens, everything. So like time and time again, like if you're looking to improve upon your health, everything isn't black and white now. In 20, 30 years when we're like in retirement and, you know, yelling at each other on the porch somewhere in some random southern state, I can tell you that what we're doing right now will be mainstream medicine.
For sure.
And I know you can agree that we are ecstatic about leading the way in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the sad reality is like, I can't tell you how many kids come in with severe issues. I mean, like severe issues and never even had lab work done. Never even had a CBC ran. No. Like it literally blows my mind. Like a $7 test was never even ran on them. Yep. And let alone running some good functional labs that can truly find some underlying issues for them. But I'm really excited to help educate other doctors in that and help really create a way to look at things that's actually going to make true long-term changes for those kids. Absolutely. For people just in general. And it's the same thing. People that are struggling with thyroid issues, the same underlying mechanisms are creating developmental issues. Absolutely. And like to some extent or another, obviously there's some things that are worse, some things that are, that are more prolific in certain areas and other ones that are more prolific in others. But figuring out those true underlying things is going to prevent those issues long-term from getting worse and worse and worse. So. Absolutely.
Well, in and of itself, like you hit a good point where like what I run into on a regular basis and why I don't take insurance anymore is because insurance and pharmaceuticals are just in cahoots, man. Like I extend my physician discount for all my labs to my patients. Yeah. And I say like, listen, if your insurance isn't going to cover blah, 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 or if your deductible is super high, if you don't have a secondary co-insurance or whatever it may be. And I'll give you, for instance, I can run like $200 worth of lab tests, which is extremely extensive at my discounted rate. And I had one patient where I was like, listen, you can use your insurance or you can use my discount. I don't care. Just make sure you know if your deductible is met and they're going to cover it. So she didn't do a due diligence. And I still hold on to this one. This one's tough. But literally, she went and got the blood work. And then she came hollering at me like a month and a half later saying, I got a bill for $1,700 and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like I told you that's what it was going to be. And the other thing was that I found out.
Where you could have ran those labs for like $200.
I told her. And she's like, no, I have insurance. I want to use my insurance. But what happens is LabCorp or Quest or any of those labs will run it at a hospital rate. Yeah. Meaning they will upcharge it and they will do whatever they need to do. And sometimes when I run labs over at LabCorp, because I use them a lot, they'll extend their cash discount. Same thing. It'll cost me $200-$300 for labs. And they'll say like, you don't have insurance? We'll extend our cash discount to you and you're not going to find it any cheaper. It's going to be $800 today.
Yeah.
Where did the extra $500 come from? And why is it going in your back pocket when they leave? And like, why are you laughing at them when they walk out the door? It's because it's a money racket, man.
Yeah.
It's always been a money racket. And to be honest with you, like, sometimes I just get frustrated because like we talked about this too, speech therapy stuff. Like, I had one patient that had been in speech therapy for like 5 years, got nowhere. I see him for a month or so. And like everybody they know, teachers, family members, I don't know what this kid did, but he's talking clear. I can finally understand him, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, man, you're kind of expensive. Am I though?
Yeah.
Am I expensive? Or like, am I getting you the results you need? How much money did your insurance pay or did you pay in that speech therapy for 5 years?
Yeah. And how much time?
How much time?
I mean, to me, time is more important than money now.
100%. That's 5 years of your kid's life that he could have been building and therapeutically building that speech 100%. Over the time. 100%. And this is why like we need to get the word out about what we actually do, because it's really a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
in that time early on is so important. Like the kid, if they're 3 years old, is gonna, like, that early intervention, like true good early intervention is vital
100%.
for getting them to have massive long-term changes, just because of what's happening in the brain, the rate the brain's changing, the structure in the brain that are developing at that time are so important for everything else to build off of it later in life.
100%. I mean, those small neurons, those neurofibrils, all the above, like the connectivity of the brain at any age, or any time during that younger year age, it's just like, it is. And that's why kids are so easy to work with, because their brain is just salivating at the mouth, saying like, give me stimulation, make it focused, help hit this portion, blah, blah, blah. And it will literally respond like wildfire.
It does. Every time. It's wild.
So.
Awesome. Well, our wives are going to get angry at us if we're not out of here soon. So. Awesome. Well, thanks for chatting with me today. We're going to have many more of these in the future. If you guys want to hear any topics specific that we can discuss, especially from both the sides, the functional side, the conventional side, the alternative side, let us know. We'd love to talk about what you guys want to learn more about. So have an awesome day. Thanks for your time, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
If you like the show, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Love to have you follow us. Love to have you help learn how to help kids if you're a doctor or a parent that's maybe struggling a little bit, of different things you can do to help your own kids. So see you next time.